Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is my second episode of my bee guide for GregTech New Horizons. Today we're going to talk about the difference between the two bee types that you will get, a few different frames, and how to read the Beealyzer. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the difference between ignoble stock princesses and pristine stock princesses, as you will undoubtedly get both as you scoop hives around the world and buy the hives from the quest book. The main difference, and the only one that I feel really matters for you to know, is that ignoble bees will die eventually, whereas pristine princesses will not. So bees have a cycle where you combine the princess and the drone together. That creates a queen. Through that, their bee cycle, it iterates, and that's when you get the materials. And then at the end of the cycle, the queen then becomes another princess and a certain amount of drones. The ignoble stock queens and princesses that come after will eventually die, and from what I know, it's after about 97 iterations. The number could have changed, but that's what I've been told. After those 97 iterations, the chance every iteration after to die will keep getting higher and eventually lead to the bee death, meaning when the queen finishes the cycle, there will no longer be a princess, only the drones remaining. Now, there are ways to mitigate it and make sure that using frames and other methods to make that ignoble bee never die or prolong the its use. But I've kind of learned that the setting up all that infrastructure, making sure that ignoble bees are in the right state so that they don't die, is a lot more work than it's worth, and you might as well just use pristine bees. So pristines, on the other hand, like I just mentioned, they can infinitely cycle. They will not die. You can keep putting them back and making materials and just chunk load the area and leave it forever. And that is why I recommend that you really only go for pristine bees in the beginning, because while they might be a little harder to get and you might have to do a little more exploring, it'll ensure that for mutating, for getting new bees, for passiving, things like that, you will always have kind of that bee there, and you won't have to worry about it dying. Now, when you get to the mega apiary, it won't matter, because as I mentioned last episode, the mega apiary just simulates the bees so that it doesn't actually go through its iteration. So then ignobles will be fine in there, and they will not die. But for this run that I did on the server, and for all future runs I may do of GregTech New Horizons with bees, I will always make sure to only use pristine stock up until I get to the mega apiary, just so I know that I can leave it be and I can keep it running, and that I'll never have to worry about it dying at some point whenever that happens to be. One other note: to check the iterations or the life cycles that a bee has gone through, you need to scan it using the Beealyzer or the scanner from GregTech, whichever method you prefer. And when you hold shift over the princess, you can now see under the italicized pristine stock 2 generations in captivity. That's how you know how many iterations the bee has gone through, and that's where you need to keep track of approaching that 97 number or further for ignoble stock. That's what will tell you whether or not the bee is close to dying. Now, like I mentioned, if it's a pristine stock, it won't matter. That number will continue to go up, and there are some bees I have in this collection that say 45,000 generations in captivity, because they've kept iterating over time and they've never died since I put them there. These next 3 frames are some frames you will get early access to via loot packs or just finding them out in the world. The first one is the Soul frame, which you can see has a higher durability than the Oblivion frame, the same territory flowering genetic decay, but it has a higher mutation rate than the Oblivion frame, but a different lifespan. So this is where you have to be careful of what frames you use. So while the mutation rate is higher, the lifespan is only times 0.75, not times 1 to the e to the 04 negative, so that it is not a 1 bee tick cycle. So you can use this frame in combination with the Oblivion frame, but if you were to only use this frame by itself, it wouldn't give you that desired 1 bee tick so that you can continue cycling through the bee life cycles to get the desired bee that you want. However, as a nice added bonus to the Oblivion frame, in the other 2 slots, a Soul frame would fit nicely. And the other 2 frames, a chocolate frame and an impregnated frame, give a higher production to the bees in the apiary and alveary if you're using those. So if you are trying to passive the early game bees, using a chocolate frame or an impregnated frame will give you that extra bit of production, extra bit of added bonus to get more materials every time the queen goes through its bee cycle. Now, if you're really lucky and you can get a mutagenic frame in the early game, you want to hold on to this for very special mutations. You can only use this 3 times. Listen to me. 3 times. You cannot repair the mutagenic frame using the 2 methods I showed you for the Oblivion frame. The lifespan is the same, goes down to the 1B tick like the Oblivion frame, but the mutation rate is ×5 and the production is +9. So be very careful if you use the mutagenic frame. You can only use it a maximum of 3 times, and it is very, very expensive to get to unless you find one out in the open. Now, the best frame in the game is actually the Maddening Frame of Frenzy. You have to do blood magic to get this frame. It is not an easy step. You have to get up to a tier 4 blood magic orb, I believe, so that you can do some rituals and keep getting life, as this frame takes 1000 LP per cycle, and it never breaks, even though the durability is 1. So as long as you have life points in your network, this frame will continue to run. As you can see, there's no flowering. The genetic case is ×10, so do not use this with the Ignoble Bee. Territory is ×1, so that's fine. Production -9001, just like the Oblivion frame. But what you are looking for is a mutation rate of ×10, and the lifespan of ×1.0 e to the -4, which is just like the Oblivion frame, takes it down to 1 B tick. There is one other thing to mention in this. Mutation rate bonuses are multiplicative. If you put 3 Maddening Frame of Frenzies in your apiary, you will get ×1000 mutation rate, meaning you are guaranteed every single time to get the bee that you want to mutate. However, like I mentioned, you need to get far into blood magic to do such things, so be careful. If you want to take a delayed route and go spend some time doing blood magic to get this frame, it will help you undoubtedly in your B run, as you will be able to always get the perfect mutation that you want. But just know it is going to be a heavy detour, and you're going to have to invest a lot of resources, a lot of time, and probably advance quite a bit in GregTech to be able to make this frame. Now, the last 2 parts of this video, I want to talk about the Ecritoire, which you see over there, and the Beealyzer, and how to read it and kind of understand what each line means. However, before we get to those, I would recommend that you do some passive automation with the basic bees that you get from the hives so that you can complement the setup. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the princess and the drone, and you're going to put it in this 2 slots here. You can shift click them in, and you're going to run and let it run. So as soon as it hits this green thing, it now makes the queen, and now the cycle has begun. My apologies. And now every bee tick, it will produce the materials that you want it to produce. Now in this instance, you will not actually want to use the Oblivion frame, as you want production. So if you have those impregnated or chocolate frames that I mentioned in the previous clip, you can put them in here, and it'll every tick, it'll reduce the durability on those, but it will give you an added bonus for production. As you can see, that was just 1 bee tick that went by. Now, there's one other way to speed up bees, and that's using a world accelerator right next to your apiary, as you can see right here. Now, while this does require some GT infrastructure, you can put a world accelerator here. Now I'm using a high voltage transformer because I'm using an EV combustion generator. What you're going to do is you're going to put the world accelerator down, screwdriver it so it's in tile entity mode, and then I would recommend putting a machine controller cover on here, shift clicking, setting it to enable with redstone, and putting a lever. And then once you turn this on and the supercharging generator, or however you're powering it, is on, you can then flick it on, and as you can see, it's now in tile acceleration mode, and it'll start speeding up the bee cycle in here. And now if you were to put an Oblivion frame, you can see how fast it actually would go, like that. And then you can just set up the automation like I showed you in the previous episode, and you can continue going on it. Now obviously, for production wise, you're not going to put the Oblivion frame like I just mentioned, but you can keep this world accelerator here and on next to it, and just so you just running, so you can keep producing materials. But remember to turn it off when you're not in use, as this will use 6 amps of whatever tier power it is, and also causes a tremendous amount of lag if you keep them on and stack multiple in the same area. Now, a small detour. When talking about bees, a few of them will have different flower types other than flowers, which is what one of the most standard ones will have. And each one is a little different. If you see rocky, it means it needs cobblestone. If you need redstone, it means a redstone torch. I don't have that pictured. If you need nether, that's a nether wart. If you need wheat, that's wheat. Cacti means cactus. THAUMCRAFT means either the cinder pearl or the shimmer leaf. End means dragon egg, and jungle means vines. And there are many that can be utilized by bees. I'll put a full list in the description down below, but just know that not every bee will require only a flower next to it. It'll require other types of materials so that it can actually do its bee cycling process. Another thing to understand is that different bees have different biome requirements. If you go to the top right tab in an apiary, it'll tell you the temperature and the humidity of where the apiary is located. If this says below 0, you are an icy. Up to 35 is cold. Between 35 and 85 will be normal. 85 to 100 would be warm, and above 100 is hot. For humidity, under 30 is arid. Between 30 and 85 is normal, and above 85 is damp. Note, the higher that you go in the world, as in go towards build height, the temperature will start decreasing and the humidity will increase. I will leave a full list in the description below, but in kind of short, if you're kind of looking for an icy temperature, humidity, normal biome, you'll want to go to a cold taiga. If you're looking for just a cold and normal biome, you'll want to go to a regular taiga. Normal damp, that would mean swampland. Warm damp would mean a jungle. Hot arid is a desert, and if it has hellish, it means you're in the nether. If you need a hellish normal or a hellish damp for a bee, you will have to use a blazing electron tube in an electron stimulator in an alveary, but I'll get more into that in its own episode. Now, after some time, you would have gained some combs from the passive automation that we did, and those combs can be used for two things. One is to be centrifuged for honey drops. Honey drops is how you scan things in the Beealyzer, and that's how you can understand more about the bees that you're breeding. And then honey is also used to just produce the fluid honey, which will be used for a lot of things. Now, the other way that you can use the combs is in this Ecritoire. The Ecritoire you can get from loot bags, or you can make in a carpenter. You just need some seed oil, 2 fences, a few slabs, steel screws, and a block of wood. Now, the Ecritoire is not a hard object to get. It is forestry made, and it is I recommend it very heavily if you're trying to get into bee breeding. For an early game source of seed oil, I recommend peanuts. You can start a big peanut farm, and you will get 36 liters of seed oil every time you fluid extract one. The other ways to do coconuts, which is very good because it produces 300 liters, but it involves a lengthy process and to get the tree breeding, to get the coconut trees to then produce the coconuts. And I don't recommend this until you are maybe an IV or LUV and you want to step up your seed oil game, as tree breeding is not fun and is not enjoyable in the slightest. But if you do it, it's well worth your while to get the seed oil. Now, the Ecritoire is a mini game in forestry that allows you to get papers that give you a higher chance of mutation. So what you're going to do is you're going to put the combs in the slots to the left here. You're going to put a drone or a princess in the middle, and you will see that a ring of these books show up. What you're going to do is you're going to click examine specimens, and now it pulls up that this mystical drone and naga drone is here. Now if I click on one, you see naga drone is there. Now I know the naga drone was right here because we just played that game. Now if I click on this again, mystical drone is here. The other mystical drone is right here. So I know this now. Now I can finish the game, and it'll give me a note saying Daddy did his notes, whatever. It'll be your name plus notes, and it'll say forestry research. Mutation discovered, forest and water. Chance for success is now higher. New species is common, and it'll give you a few combs back. You can take the note, and then you can right click, and then now your chance to get that mutation of a common between a forest princess and a water drone is now higher than the normal percentage chance that it shows you on the bee breeding page when you bring it up. This game is very fun to do, just to have fun and play around, see if you can remember. Some drones past, like the base ones, will have more of these slots unlocked, so it becomes a little harder, and the game becomes more fun. But it is a really good way early game to get a higher success chance at the mutations, and it doesn't really cost much, as you get some honeycombs back and you will be producing quite a bit of them in the long run. And finally, in this final part of the episode, I will talk to you about how to read the Beealyzer and kind of understand each line and what they mean for you as you go forward in your bee breeding process. As I mentioned, you're going to want honey drops or honeydew, both which are produced by some of the early game combs you get from the base bees and the first few mutated bees, which we'll cover in the next episode. You're going to put the princess in the slot up here. You're going to put the honey drop with it, and now it'll scan as it'll go through this process, and now it'll show you all of this sort of information on the home screen. You can use a field kit and you can use a GregTech scanner to also kind of scan the bees, but this gives you way more information. This is frankly a lot easier, and I prefer this method over those other two. Now let's talk about some of the stuff on here. Species tells you what bee you're looking at. You have an active and you have an inactive, or dominant and recessive. Shout out biology class. And you can see that this one is a mixed breed between forest and meadows. Now, to get a pure princess, which you will need for the completion of quests, this species in both the active and inactive tab will have to be the same. So if I wanted a pure forest drone, a pure common, pure infinity drone, it would have to say species infinity, inactive infinity. Now, let's talk about the other stuff on this list. The lifespan. The lifespan is how it determines how many bee ticks it goes through. Remember earlier in this episode, I talked about the bee tick and the bee cycle and how the Oblivion frame takes it down to that one bee tick cycle. This is how you know what base stats that the lifespan of the bee will have. Shortest is the shortest lifespan, and that's 10 bee ticks, while Eon is the longest lifespan, and that's 600 bee ticks. For the purpose of this guide, I will show you how to get longest, which is around 60, which is the one right below Eon, as I don't believe the detour to get to Eon and kind of convert them into your bees, it's not worth it. The hassle is just too much, and it's just easier to keep longest around, as you will eventually switch to shortest. From what I will tell you, if you are passiving the bee in an apiary or an alveary, you are going to want longest lifespan, as that gives it the most amount of time to produce the materials where it sits and give, and for the queen to do its cycle. If you're using the industrial apiary and the mega apiary that follows it, you want shortest lifespan, as those are simulating and they're not, and they also do it a lot faster. So just remember that. Apiary, alveary, you want longest lifespan. Industrial apiary, mega apiary, you want shortest lifespan. Now, production is the chance to acquire a material every time that it goes through that cycle in that bee tick. Slowest is obviously the slowest. It's the worst one you want. The highest one is blinding. That I will show you how to get and mutate onto your bees. But just know that anything in between there's a few in between, but blinding is the best, slowest is the worst. And the reason I'm not giving you full numbers is because there are guides out there. There are wikis on the GTNH wiki, GTNH Discord, that will give you the exact numbers and formulas about how to accurately predict how much material production you will get depending on what your production trade is, what your lifespan is. I don't really care for that. The point of this guide is to kind of show to you basic terms, tell you how I did it, how I understand it, in hopes that it helps you learn bees. I don't want to just throw out numbers at you for, frankly, one, some of them I don't even understand myself, and two, because it doesn't help in the long run. If I was learning bees, I don't care to know that blinding speed is 2 times production every bee tick cycle, depending on how much lifespan it is. I just want to know blinding is the best. Put that on your bee, you'll get more materials. That's what I will take from that, and then go forward and put it on my bees to know, for the future. Now, pollination is the chance. Pollination is how fast bees will pollinate the surrounding forestry trees. We don't really care about that unless you are doing tree breeding, but just know that when you look at this stat, it's not going to matter, especially if you don't have forestry trees around you. And if you do, be careful, because it gets very laggy, as they will also spawn butterflies, and it's not a very fun time. The flower type, as I mentioned earlier, flowers are different for each bee. Some will say rocky, some will say wheat, some will say cactus. You just need to know which ones to put around the apiary when you have it. But flower type, you can just put flower. You can eventually get to the point where you put flowers on each bee, and then it really won't have to matter. The fertility can be any number between 1 and 4. And for breeding, 4x fertility is the best. As you can see, this has a 3 times on this one, 2 times on this one. 4x fertility is the best because when the queen ends its cycle, it means that 4 drones will be produced, meaning you have a higher chance of getting that mutation that you want. If it says 1 times, it's going to be a really hard time to produce or get the mutation you want because it'll only ever produce 1 drone. With 2, minimum 2, you can keep doing the bee cycle and the loop over and over again, and you'll continuously get an additional drone. But with 1x fertility, that will not happen. So you will want to get 4x fertility for breeding, but when you are going to passive something or put a bee in a industrial apiary or mega apiary or just an alveary that you're going to leave and just let it run, you want to have 1x, as it won't produce additional drones that you'll have to deal with, and it will just continuously do its cycle and get the materials that you want. Now, the territory is also largely irrelevant, but it is the area that the bee will look to do its effect. Now, there are some effects in the game that are very useful, like the regenerative one, which boosts THAUMCRAFT nodes. If you put the apiary or the alveary near a THAUMCRAFT node, it'll just give it random aspects. That's a very good one. There's one that gives regeneration. So if you're standing around it, you'll get the potion effect regeneration. But there are other ones that are bad. That'll give you poison, or it'll make you explode, or it'll give you radiation. So the effect of the bee, which is down here, is used in that territory, but it's largely irrelevant unless you actually specifically need it for some things, like the THAUMCRAFT energizing node. And as I just mentioned, effect, there are different effects in the game. This one has none because it's a base bee, but other ones that you will breed in the future will have some really bad effects, and some will have some good ones, and we'll talk about those when it's time to get down to it. On the second page, it tells you more about the climate and how you can manipulate the bees to work in different biomes. The climate and the humidity that's here will always be the same for the bee. Now, this is an ocean queen, so it'll always be normal damp for climate and humidity. But the number next to it means you can be in different sort of biomes to still breed and produce combs. It can go up 5, down 5. It can also be both 5, as you see on the inactive traits here. Now, so it's the same for both the climate and the humidity. Take note for this next point, as is very important. You can breed bees in whatever climate you want. If they have both 5, you could breed them in any climate on your Minecraft world. It doesn't matter where. You could breed and mutate into whatever bee you want. However, to get a bee's special production, you need to be in its preferred climate. Its preferred climate will always be its initial normal damp for this ocean, or hot and arid for this titanium bee. While it's both 5, I have both 5 tolerance on both them. That means I can produce I can use the bee anywhere to produce its combs, but if I wanted its special production chance, I'd have to be in a specific climate. In the climate I'm in right now, I'm in normal. I'm producing this titanium bee here. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't need this almandine comb as a special production. I only wanted the titanium comb so I could produce it in any biome that I wanted, and that's why it works, because it has both 5 on the tolerance for both climate and humidity. Now, the final few on this list: diurnal means can it work throughout the day? You want yes on both. Nocturnal, yes, it can work throughout the night. Tolerant flyer is how it can produce during rain, or can it work during rain? The answer is yes here. And cave dwelling is, can it be underground, so you don't need direct access to sunlight. Obviously, this bee says no, because there's direct sunlight, as you can see above me by the glass. But if you are breeding kind of the perfect bee to put as a passive in some area, like in a corner of your base underground or wherever, and you just want to let it run forever, then you would want all of these stats to say yes. So to reiterate, I know I threw a lot of information at you this episode. There are tons of things with bees, and I hope that by doing these episodes and kind of breaking it down into individual parts, I can show you and showcase what kind of things you can do with bees and how to understand them. Just reminder that you will have to put in some time to do bees. It's not just a one-off, let's get it done one day and move on. It's consistently a thing to work on, and as you move up in GregTech tiers and get access to more materials, you can then make more bees to help complement you as you try to get the Stargate role. I hope this was informative. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'm sorry again for sounding nervous. I'm still trying to get used to this recording thing. Next episode will be about the basic bee breeding. We'll start working towards the alveary and getting your APR suit. I will see you guys next time. Thanks.